So I'm in our class page here. Okay. For your test, you should be able to list the values for A, C, H, and K from an equation. Based on your most recent quizzes, that was still a struggle for us. We'd want to make sure we have that rock solid, ready to go for the test. You'll have to describe the transformation from an equation. I will give you the criteria to describe that transformation, but to do that, what do you need to have? The A, C, H, and K. If you can't get those correctly, it's going to be hard to write the description correctly. The way I'm going to give you those criteria, if I look at the note card page, is this right here is the criteria. I've written it a little bit more compactly than when I wrote it on the notes, but that'll appear on your test. If you can't make sense of that and you prefer to have it the way we wrote it in the notes, then that would need to go into your note card. But okay, you'll need to calculate amplitude, midline, period, frequency from an equation. In order to do those calculations, what do you have to get from the equation? A, C, H, and K. If you can't get those correctly, it's going to be hard to get the correct answers there, right? You're detecting a pattern here. Got to be able to do that. You need to be able to write the equation of a sinusoid from the description. So that's just like worksheet 4. And you should be able to write the equation of a sinusoid from a graph. That's like worksheet 5. I'm going to tell you which function to use, whether I want you to do it as a sine or a cosine. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference on those graphing ones, which one you do, because you usually have, a midline point and an extreme point. So either one should be just as easy as the other, but you got to know how to cope with that. And then you should be able to draw a graph and generate the points for that graph from the equation. In order to do that, what do you have to get from the equation? A, C, H, and K. If you can't get those to come out correctly, you're not going to get the right points, and then you're not going to get the right graph. Okay? So today you're going to be building your note card. Remind me, what are the rules for your note card? Half sheet. Front and back. Name's got to be on there. Hour is fine, whatever. A couple other things. Due today by the end of class, ideally. And handwritten. You got to write it yourself. You can't print something out and tape it to a sheet of paper or something. Everybody's cool? All right. So at minimum on my note card, these are the things that I would include. If I were writing a note card for me, Mr. Kulik, pretending I'm a student right now. So I would have that general form for my function that I use to pull the values for A, C, H, and K out of. Notice here I wrote trig, where trig could be sine, cosine, or tangent, but this form is still going to look the same. I have the way to calculate amplitude, midline, period, and frequency for sine and cosine, and also for tangent. Notice for tangent there's no amplitude, but I can still use that to get A. And the period and frequency, the formula is slightly different than sine and cosine, right? So this is my description, or the criteria to describe the transformation. That'll be given to you on your test still. I put it here just to remind me to tell you guys that, so you know what I meant by I'm going to give this to you, and then you look at it and it's like, that's not the way you wrote it in the notes. It's like, well, okay, it's a little different, but I would want to make sure that when drawing my graph, I know that my transformation map is Cx plus H, Ay plus K, so I put that on there. And then I wrote some general notes for how to do some of these problems. So if I need to go from an equation to graph, I want to start by, hi, Miss Logo. Joey, this is for you. then what I'd want to do is find the A, C, H, and K from the form or from the equation. You're welcome. I made a note that C is the reciprocal for the coefficient on X. On your homework quizzes, most of you messed that up. H is always the opposite sign it appears. You didn't have a chance to mess that up because there was no H in the graphing problem. But many of you would have. And then I put in bold, make sure to factor before finding H. Then I went and calculate the amplitude, midline, period, frequency using the formulas. And remember that period and frequency are different for tangent than they are for sine and cosine. And then I wrote my transformation map. And then just plug my points in that I'm given, right? If I want to go from graph to equation, I want to find the midline. That's going to give me K. Find the amplitude. That's going to give me absolute value A. Find the period. That'll allow me to solve for C. Again, depending on whether I have a sine or cosine or tangent problem, the period formula is different. If I'm writing a sine function, I'm going to use the H, or the X coordinate is going to be my H from my midline point. And the type of midline point gives me the sine of A. Remember, if the next extreme of following the midline point is minimum, the A is negative. If it's a maximum, A is positive. If I'm writing a cosine function, then I'm going to use an extreme point. The X coordinate from that extreme point is my H. And the type of extreme point tells me the sine of A. So again, minimum is negative A, maximum is positive A. If I want to go from a description to an equation, and I'm looking to find the midline, I know that if I have a minimum and maximum, I can take the average of their y coordinates to get K. If I have a midline point, then K is just the y coordinate from that. Or if I have a free point, I'm just going to pick it to be a midline point, and then the K is the y coordinate from that. If I'm looking for an amplitude, and I'm given min and max, the amplitude is half the difference in the y coordinates. And if I'm given an extreme point, so a min or a max, and a midline point, the amplitude is just the absolute value of the difference between that min and max's y and the midline point's y. If I'm finding period and I have a min and a max, I know that the period is half the absolute value of the difference in the x coordinates. If I have a midline point and the next extreme point, it's going to be a quarter period is the absolute value of the difference in the x coordinates. And if I have a min max and then the second min max, that's going to be 3/2 of a period is going to be the absolute value of the difference in the x's. So these were scenarios we saw in the homework. If I have a midline point or a free point, the h is just going to be the x coordinate, and the type of midline point will determine the sign on A, whether it's followed by a min or a max. And then if I have mins and maxes, the h is going to be the x coordinate from either one, and then the sign of A will be negative for min and positive for max. So I just kind of made myself some notes on kind of how to do those problems. Again, you can include this or not. It's your note card. This is the way I would write my note card rather than doing a bunch of example problems. I would have some like how to do it instructions for myself. I think that, for me, that would be more useful. Now, the way I've written it, you may want to write it in your own words. You don't have to write it exactly the way I've written it if you don't understand what I'm writing. Write it in a way that's understandable to you. But that's the way I would do that. Now, when you write your note card today before you turn it in, if I'm you, I would take a picture of it so that when I'm studying and doing my review guide, I can have my note card sitting next to me and I can practice using my note card to do the problems. Where on my note card is my stuff that I need to do this problem? where on my note card is the stuff I can use to do the next problem, so that I'm good at using my note card come the test. I noticed on the first test that a lot of us didn't seem like we really used our note card a whole lot. My advice to you is, before you turn that into me, take a picture. When you do your review, have your note card next to it. Practice using the note card when you're doing your review. It'll make a big difference come test time. This test in particular is really going to be all about how good your note card is. You know what I mean? There's a lot of little like formulas and stuff to memorize. It's a lot. It's why the note card's going to be super helpful for you. So do a good job and then practice using it. If anybody has individual questions about homeworks or quiz stuff or whatever, feel free to come on up and talk to me one-on-one while you guys are putting your note cards together. And unless anybody has any questions about test format or whatever, I'm going to pass back these homework quizzes and just get out of your way and let you guys start working on your note cards. Anybody with questions? Okay.